Hello, here are my reflections on the reading from St. John's Epistle and Gospel for this Sunday. They all hinge around the phrase, "If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love." Last week there were a lot of variations on the word abide. Abide still shows up today quite a lot, but commandments clearly have the stage. Many of you will know that I'm a happy cyclist. Fewer will know that I have an abiding love of motorbikes. I got my first motorcycle when we were still in England in my 20s. Not long after beginning to ride, Lucy and I were in London and met her brother Stuart, who was qualifying as a doctor, when a loud motorbike zoomed past us, in and out of the London traffic. We'd arrived by train, and we were just walking along with him, and vroom, it went through. "Oh," said Stuart, "we love motorcycles. We call them donor machines. Lovely fresh organs from healthy young bodies. Most of them are signed donor cards, so we just can harvest the organs while they're fresh." Yeah, I didn't have to ask anything or make a comment. Many young men on bikes don't really follow the rules of the road. If there's a gap wider than your handlebars, then a sudden roar of acceleration will shave at least 30 seconds off your trip. Go for it. It was after that chilling conversation that I thought about Lucy being widowed in her 20s, or worse, having a vegetable for a husband. So I began to follow the rules a bit more closely, bending them only when it was perfectly safe. We all know that the rules of the road are there for good reason. When we lived in BC, the government there runs both the vehicle insurance and the police checking in traffic. And while we were there, they enforced speed limits and found that insurance claims for crash and damage fell in direct proportion. What a surprise! Drive at the speed limit and you don't have crashes. Obey the rules and you will live longer with fewer ambulance rides. That might be a good summary, and I might add, you will worry much less about speed traps. John says, "If you keep my commandments, if you keep my rules, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love." That's how John remembered Jesus' teaching. Keeping commandments is not something that sounds exciting or fun. Reviewing your day before going to bed at night and realizing that you've committed 6 infractions of the 10 commandments, this is not a happy thought. The image springs to mind of angels in uniforms with peaked caps and notebooks writing out tickets that will be entered into the heavenly data bank. Oh dear. However, this is the pessimistic thinking of a repeat offender and not what the original meaning of the commandment was. The commandments describe a way of life which is safe. It is a life which will lead you to live in peace with the people in your life. It's a guide to decision-making and responding thoughtfully to the impulses that you may regret if you don't think about the choices you make. You may have to dig yourself out of damaged relationships and broken trust. In my analogy, you end up with a smashed-up bike and broken bones. When we returned to Ontario a decade ago, I had to do a course for motorcycling for my Ontario driver's license. It was an outdoor Saturday morning 4 sessions event. Safety and technique for new riders and for returning riders like me. It was about riding well and safely. It was about thinking ahead, reading the road and the traffic and the pedestrians. It was about a higher level of awareness and focus, and it was great fun. And it was about the joy of riding well. The 10 Commandments feel like they're about the avoidance of collisions with your neighbour and about living in the presence of God, who, a bit like photo radar, is recording your law-breaking. But the teaching of Jesus invites you into the joy of living safely and well. He says this, "As my Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep the commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love." I have said these things to you so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Jesus' Drive Well Through Life book is not based on rules to be broken and punishments that must follow. It's based on living in the peace of God, in a relationship of love and quiet joy. It's about guilt and shame not being part of how things are ordered in your life, but peace and tranquility as the markers of a mind at rest and your heart at peace. Kings and politicians and even school teachers, ministers and parents have preferred to use the stick of disobedience and punishment and have attributed this to God's will to back them up. But God's will operates the other way around. It does not chase you from badness with fearful punishment. It draws you into love with encouragement and praise for every step you take into Christ-likeness. And if you do screw up in an awful way, Jesus approaches you with a get-out-of-jail-free card. As soon as you realize you've landed yourself there and what you've done, and you deeply wish you hadn't broken the guidelines of freedom, Jesus has promised to go to the deepest level of hell to get you out. It is not about deserving or earning. It is about being loved and living in the knowledge that you are loved and just letting that soak into you. The teaching of Jesus, like those of the Torah, are rules for a happy life. The Torah enforced with the threat of punishment, the stick. The new law of Jesus has no enforcement, only the carrot of inextinguishable love and healing. This, I know, is pretty optimistic teaching today, and you might dismiss it as another green-leafed sermon on the innocence of man, as Dylan Thomas once wrote of the Reverend Eli Jenkins in Under Milkwood. But actually, it is about the very hard and focused work of holding in front of your consciousness that you live in a continually awake presence of God's compassionate love for you. It is the spirituality of practicing the presence of God, reminding yourself that God is always continually right with you. Keeping within a life lived which you can share with God is demanding and requires focus. It is a way of life that is filled with peace and joy. And it is a road that God will gladly lead you back to every time you fall off your bike and end up bruised and disheartened. Remember what Jesus said. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love. With love from Jesus. Amen. Bye-bye.